As usual, rain in Bali, but that's not going to stop us, is it? And today I'm going to discuss GMIS Bali and my role as manager. As I discussed in my first video about GMIS Bali, I was brought here on the request of the chairman. And the role was two areas. I was a bursar, which was the person in charge of finances, and second, of course, the general manager, the person who looks after the staff, the teachers, and of course the students. So in those two roles I was brought down, and yeah, first impressions, wow, this is a school that looks very similar to Jakarta, and of course in one way it was very different. And that's, wow, lots of white faces. I kid you not, there was probably about 70% of my time in GMIS Jakarta where I was pretty much the only white face, certainly the only white teacher. There'll have been a few mixed kids, but generally it was Korean, it was Indian, it was Chinese, Indonesian. Anyway, Bali was very different. It had white teachers, and lots of them, from all sorts of places, from Canada, from Czechoslovakia. Anyway, it also had Filipino teachers, but as always, the majority were Indian teachers, and of course Indian teachers. Okay, so what were my roles? Well, first, as we entered the school, we'd see the receptionists. And to me, receptionists are very, very crucial to a school's development. They're the front line. They're the people, well, that the parents see. They're the face of GMIS Bali. And it was lucky that we had two exceptional receptionists. Good in English, polite, articulate, and yeah. Now, to the left of them was the principal's office, and their principal had a secretary, I had a secretary, supervisors had secretaries, and the secretary also had a crucial role. A lot of people don't know how important a secretary is to a CEO of a business, to the bank manager, but they know all the secrets. Also, they give access to you as the manager. So if they don't like you or they think you're not worth seeing, they'll probably not inform us. So secretaries, always keep them sweet. I always looked after the secretaries in GMIS Jakarta, treated them well, so I always had access to the principal. Some people just don't know how to act with people or get upset. The last person you want to get upset to is the secretaries. Okay, so to the right of the reception were, okay, so in this office, there were three girls, all very good, all very competent, generally dealing with admissions, so another crucial task. Admissions, my gosh. So somebody's going to tell you the prices, how the school works, etc., etc. The second person you'll meet. Now, if it was a Western parent, I'd often get involved, but certainly, first of all, it would be the main admissions officer. They also dealt with petty cash, they dealt with tutoring, things like that. Good office, good people. Okay, next, the largest number of individuals I had to look after were the drivers. Yeah, we had about 16 drivers on our paid bill. Okay, so 2 drivers were designated for the principal and I, so they were solely for our purpose. And then there were 2 bus drivers. One would pick up some students in Uluwatu and far away, and the other would transport staff to and from the apartments. just after I came, the teachers got a set of apartments, which meant we didn't have to deal with individual housing for many of the teachers anymore. It was all for the Indian teachers. The Western teachers had to kind of fend for themselves a bit. But the Indian teachers were well looked after, much better than in Jakarta, I may say. These were nice apartments in a nice area with swimming pool. So it was very nice for them. Anyway, the drivers, they'd also take kids on field trips. And yeah, the drivers would do all sorts of jobs, taking staff to ministry positions, taking staff to buy cake, whatever. The drivers were always required. Okay, as we enter the school, we have the school nurse. In GMIS, we only had a nurse. We didn't have a doctor like we did in Jakarta, mainly because our numbers were about 500. Jakarta had 2,000, so there was a residential doctor in Jakarta. In GMS Jakarta, the doctor was actually, one of my favourite people. I always went in there, and there were always kids requiring TLC, tender loving care. And that was the same for the doctor in Bali. Beautiful lady. And sadly missed, she left about a year before I to get married, and I think she went to Java. Beautiful lady, inside and out. Yeah. The nurse we ended up with, I'm afraid, wasn't so good. Anyway, moving on, we've got the book room. Book room hands out the uniforms, the books, etc., etc., does the orders, because each year different books are required. Okay, then we've got maintenance, which was next to my office, and there you'd have the computer guys dealing with anything computer, and of course maintenance is what it says, looking after the school, making sure there's no power cuts and things like this, looking after the apartments, making the school look green, all sorts of interesting things. A very competent staff there. And then we had the pantry. We had a couple of girls there. They'd bring the coffee to the supervisors, myself and the principal. They'd prepare the meeting room if we had dignitaries coming. We had a nice meeting room at GMIS Bali, very cosy. It fit about 16. Very pleasant girls. And then we had teacher assistants, though I didn't specifically look after the teacher assistants. And we had other staff. As you can see in the thumbnail, which I think I've used before, the majority are ladies, but all the drivers were men. Same with teachers, generally it's a female world now. One thing I did when I got to GMIS Bali, because security is so important, I asked the chairman to have an armed policeman. I've always believed, and still do, that for a terrorist threat, an international school, should be in their top 3 list. Belsen won't be the only case of an international school facing terrorism. And I'm happy to say the chairman agreed, and we ended up getting a armed policeman. Now, he's not going to stop a terrorist threat, but if I'm a bunch of terrorists looking for a school, I might decide, well, we'll skip that one, let's go to a school that doesn't have an armed policeman. Anyway, it's all about deterrence. We also used G4S. They weren't employed as staff, they were employed directly by us. G4S, by the way, is ex-Securicor, if you weren't aware. Again, very, very competent. And then, of course, we have the cleaning service, ISS, I think the biggest cleaning service in the world, Scandinavian in origin. Again, very competent. You'd have about 10 or 12 of them cleaning the toilets, preparing function rooms, etc. So a good bunch of staff. So that was who I looked after. As I say, my duties were very varied, from financial to dealing with sometimes a problem. Okay, so for example, we had a couple of kids, they were running and they hit their heads, so we had to get a driver, get them to the hospital, call the parents. But I mean, you know, things like that happen at the school. So that's generally all about my role as general manager. I had a lot of fun, you know, I mean, it was an important role, but I also had fun with it, and it all came to a horrible end. And guess what? I'll be discussing that in the next video. Anyway, as always, ba ba, don't be a sheep.